Hey guys, Pete here. Mr. Robot Season 2 Episode 7 aired last night, and we got ourselves some big answers. The power in my neighborhood got knocked out for like 5 hours by a crazy storm that went through, so my recap this time is going to be a little bit different. I usually like to go through the whole episode scene by scene, but due to time constraints, I'm going to do an overview of each character instead. Let me know in the comments which style you like better for future reviews. We'll start out with Angela and Dom. Last we saw them, Dom had approached her at her desk and wanted to know what she was doing on a restricted floor. We pick up at the exact same place to see that Angela is able to stonewall her. She tells her she was on the floor because she was making plans with the agent that she talked to. Dom tells her she knows about her background, asks her some questions that Angela doesn't answer, and then Dom backs off. She tells her that she was planning on having her in to answer some questions soon anyways, and Angela says no problem, she's just really busy right now. Angela then completes what she was doing on the computer, and Darlene says they are in. Later we see Dom discover that the footage from the 23rd floor has been erased, and she tells the agents that they've been hacked. She tells them to sweep the floor and to check Angela's computer, although she doesn't think they're going to find anything. Angela heads home and runs into Darlene, who tries to explain about Cisco and the CD. She offers to tell Angela anything about F Society that she wants to know, and Angela says she already knew and just goes inside. Later we see Angela at Walmart where her dad works. On the TV screen we see a shot of the floor of Congress on C-SPAN. They are voting on the bailout, and the balls from the bull statue from Wall Street come crashing through the skylight on the chamber floor. This was the big thing that F Society was planning for the bailout vote in DC, and the shot is also interesting because we can see the date is 7/7/15. This gives us the idea that it's been less than 60 days since the hack actually happened. Angela tells her dad to have the lawyers drop the contingency for the independent inspections in the lawsuit so that E-Corp will settle. Her dad doesn't want to follow her advice, and she leaves it off at things were going to happen either way, and she was just there as a courtesy. We next see Angela in Price's office, and we find out the contingency had been lifted. They have a conversation where she tells him that she wants transferred to the risk management division so that she can make changes from within. He tells her it's his birthday and asks her if she wants to celebrate, which she says no to. Later we see her in the new position where she works her way into a debriefing meeting. While there, she tries to gain access to files under some guys, and her request freaks everyone out so that the director ends up having to stop the meeting. He has some words for her, but it isn't really clear what is going to happen for her in this part of the company. We get a little bit of Joanna's story in the very beginning. We see a flashback scene with Tyrell at a function where they meet Scott and Sharon Knowles for the first time. After that, we see her on the street with the baby, and a woman comes up on the street and throws a can of red paint on her while calling her a capitalist pig. We get a couple of other scenes with her and her boyfriend, which aren't very interesting. The one thing we do find out is that even though she won't be seen with him in public, she shows him a piece of paper, which is basically divorce papers, and she says that's his birthday present. I've complained about the Joanna scenes before, so I don't really see a need to do it again. We have one scene where we see Trenton, Mobley, Cisco, and Darlene all together. They look worried, and when Darlene comes over to view the screen, she just asks, "So this is supposed to be happening tomorrow?" Elliot finally gets answers from Mr. Robot after pushing him to tell the truth about what happened after the hack. After some back and forth, he finally says he will tell and asks Elliot what is the last thing he remembers. He says he remembers the popcorn machine, which reminded me of the first episode of this season. Mr. Robot explains that they didn't have a choice, and when pushed about how they did it, tells Elliot he shot him. Elliot makes sure to say no, it wasn't Mr. Robot, it was actually him who shot Tyrell. I suppose this would explain the shell casing that Dom found at the arcade, but we don't get any other details about what happened after that. So we're not really sure if he's dead. I mean, I kind of assume that he's dead, but we don't really know. That makes it a little bit hard to figure out who's been sending the stuff to Joanna, and it kind of made a red flag for me that the timelines might not all be consistent with each other. I really don't know, so I'm not just going to ramble on about it. We next see Elliot in front of a terminal where Ray and Lone Star are forcing him to fix the site. He finishes the migration, and then when Lone Star tries to take him back to the basement, he asks Ray to play a game of chess for old time's sake. During the game, Ray thanks Elliot for being his answer. He explains that the site was his wife's idea and that they made a decision to let the market dictate what was sold on the site and agreed not to look. Basically, they were just looking the other way because it was bringing in a lot of money. He explains it bothered her less than him, but that he still never looked until Elliot came along. He expresses remorse and then asks Elliot how much time does he have. He says they both knew exactly what was going to happen whenever he let him back on the computer, and Elliot explains that the authorities should be surrounding them at any minute. Ray then tells him to get out of there before they arrive, and as Elliot walks out the front door, we see agents rushing in, and he explains to us that he sent an anonymous tip after indexing part of the website. Elliot is talking to Leon on the basketball court, who's telling him that people are after him because of the raid. A group of guys walk up, and this is pretty much where I knew the institution theory was going to come true. So they threaten Elliot that they'll see him later for a one-on-one. The guys mention being out 800 bitcoins and not being able to get into their wallet since the site has been taken down. If that doesn't sound like a lot, keep in mind that one bitcoin is worth around $575 right now. So yeah, they're talking about almost $500,000. And they're basically saying that Elliot now owes them that money. We next see Elliot in his Bible study group where he wants to apologize to the woman who's in charge. She hugs him and explains that she sees Elliot talking to him, meaning God, inside his head. She leaves and Elliot calls Mr. Robot by saying that he needs help. He explains that he needs to finish what he started with Evil Corp, but that he doesn't know what to do. They have their normal exchange where Mr. Robot tells him that he did all those things anyways. Elliot himself did them, and tells Elliot if he wants to finish this, he needs to lead. He needs to be a leader. After that, we see him walking down the street, and the gang of guys from the basketball court push him into an alley. If you were thinking that maybe he wasn't in jail, you definitely had to start to relent whenever you see they're about to rape him. At the last minute, Leon shows up and slits all their throats, and that saves him. He then tells Elliot he will be getting a letter in the mail on Tuesday, and he needs to do what it says, and then mentions White Rose. He says if you talk to White Rose, or when you talk to White Rose, tell him that Leon did good for him. Basically Leon looked out for him. So we get this connection between White Rose and Leon. We see Elliot showing the letter to Krista, and we assume it says he'll be getting out. She is happy and asks him how things are going with Mr. Robot. He says that they trust each other for the first time, and then mentions about the routine and his, at his mom's house. She gives him a serious look to say that you're not really at your mom's house, and he says he knows. Then we get the big reveal that so many people have been waiting for. We find out Elliot has really been in jail. He invented the story about staying at his mom's house so that he could be able to deal with the situation, and he tells us that he's sorry for lying. We get a nice sequence of images that show each of the locations from the season, his room, the basketball court, and so on, and we see them turn into what they really look like in the jail. As someone who was begrudgingly coming around to this theory, I thought the scene was pretty effective. The one thing we don't see is Ray's office or anything else related to him, but perhaps we'll get more insight on that later on in a later episode. Elliot ends things off by saying that he hopes now that we can trust each other again. He said that everything really did happen, but now that leaves us with a lot of unanswered questions. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I didn't like the institution theory because I was afraid the show would get too gimmicky if we're always wondering what the big delusion is that's going on. But at the same time, I did say that I thought Sam Esmail does a really good job of storytelling so that he should be able to pull it off. So in the end, I'm not sure. When I pointed out my concerns about his mother, how she was always sitting behind them when they were talking so openly a few videos back, at that point I really started to make peace with the idea. I'm not sure if the clues became more overt or if it was just the cumulative nature of it, but it started to get harder to ignore. Let's hope that the future seasons can keep it together without going off the deep end in order to try to outdo the last big decision or delusion that it had. I mean, that's my biggest fear, and I just hope they keep the show interesting. And I do have to hand it to the Redditors who spotted this in the very first episode of the season. I mean, this theory's been around since the very first one, so they were right. So a lot of questions and a lot to think about. If Elliot shot Tyrell, does that mean he's dead? Where's Elliot going now? Will Joanna's story lead somewhere interesting, or is she just being set up as a future enemy of Elliot's? What's Dom's next move? Who was Ray really, and will we ever see him again? I'm not sure about any of these answers. I got some guesses and some theories, but why don't you guys let me know what you think. Please like the video if you found it interesting, and let me know in the comments which format you like better. The full scene breakdown or this sort of overview. Sorry I didn't have as much time this week, but please subscribe to my channel for new Mr. Robot videos, which I put out each week right after the episode comes out. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.